Welcome, Freedom Fighter 1776, the podcast. I'm your host, Mark Basha, and we're back with another episode. We've got an excellent guest on today. We're going to be talking about Swamp Monsters with Cameron Smith. Before I get into him, go ahead over to freedomfighter1776.com. Check out the information over there. Share it with your friends. Share this episode. Like this episode. Push it out. We talk about and we highlight individuals who stand up against tyranny, stand up against this belligerence that's been going on. We bring them on this episode. It's going to be pretty lighthearted. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. And before I get to our guest, I just want to highlight his background, his experience, his biography. And I'll bring him on. So Cameron Smith served nearly 6 years in the U.S. Air Force, reaching the rank of a civil servant of a GS-13 as lead IT enterprise architect for the depot sustainment of a new airframe. He left civil service position due to the weaponized COVID-19 injection mandates and was threatened with arrest after submitting a religious accommodation to the U.S. Air Force. Spent 13 years also in the Oklahoma Army National Guard and resigned his commission and ending his service as a Chief Warrant Officer 3 due to the weaponized injection mandates for COVID-19 and due to witnessing the illegal behavior of military leadership during that time, directed at service members who had submitted religious accommodations and those who submitted protected communications to their chain of command. Worked in the IT industry for 19 years, working at places like Microsoft and the Defense Information Systems Agency. He's now the CTO of Falcon Trading Cards LLC and co-creator of Swamp Monsters, merging satire and strategy to affect positive change for civilians and service members alike through comedy and culture. I'm going to bring him on stage now. Welcome, Cameron, to the show. Freedom Fighter 1776. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to have you. We're going to dive into this, but before we get into the game, before we get into what you're doing for Swamp Monsters and Falcon Trading Cards, give the audience a little bit more background about, I guess, your military service, your civil service, the last 5 years of experience with this belligerence going on, and then we'll slide right into what you're doing now with these companies that you've built.
Thanks. Yeah, sure. I'd love to talk about it. So a little bit about me. I was raised in the Midwest. I'm a military brat. My dad was in the U.S. Marine Corps. He fought in Kuwait and Desert Storm. And I have always wanted to join the military. It was always a dream of mine. I'm a disappointment in the family because I didn't join the Marines. I joined the Army National Guard, but I tried to make the best out of the career. So, but when I was 19, I joined the Army. I've always been, technically minded. And at the time, I was going to college, studying computer science, and I was honestly kind of bored. I was working at a help desk for Seagate Technology at the time, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go join the Army, and I was able to get a decent gig as a military intelligence in military intelligence as a intelligence and electronic warfare tech. And so I worked on the U.S. Army's all their intel systems, SATCOM, drones, IT systems. I've also done digital forensics and stuff like that. I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 with the 45th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, saw combat, all that fun stuff. So went and did all that stuff. After I got back from Afghanistan, I became an NCO, so I was a sergeant for a while, and then I missed my time and grade selection for staff sergeant by, I think, 2 weeks. And so instead of waiting another year, I dropped a warrant officer packet and I went to warrant officer candidate school, and I went to Fort Rucker, which was fantastic. Actually not. Fort Rucker's terrible. but but was able to come out on top of that and receive my commission. Um, After that time, that was 2015 when I got my commission as a warrant officer, and served as a platoon leader with the 45th, and I ran all the intelligence systems for the state of Oklahoma
Wow.
for all the way up until 2021. So for 6 years, and at the same time, I was dual track. So not only was I in the guard, I was also working in the civilian industry in different capacities. So I've worked for the Defense Information Systems Agency. I was on their enterprise email team. It was the largest exchange environment in the world, like 1.5 million mailboxes. And so did a lot of really cool technical stuff with that. I got picked up by Microsoft doing identity stuff and cloud stuff, and kind of got burnt out, and then went back, started working with the Air Force again, and got brought on the civil service. And my expertise really is in constructing SCIFs and SAPFs. So I have a lot of experience with designing and constructing actually secure facilities. One of the places I designed was a 300,000 square foot data center for the Air Force. So that was during COVID. So I was in the middle of doing some pretty big stuff for a big program in the Air Force. Can't talk about that, but it was just crazy how, I was like one deep in a field setting up the depot sustainment for one of the Air Force's new airframes, and they're playing games, and so we can get into that later. But I was able to. But
would you say majority of your experience and training came from the military, and then you were able to take it with you to the civilian side, or was it kind of a duality where you were the civilian side, you were getting that experience as well, and being able to transition it over into the military, kind of back and forth?
Yes.
Or was it heavy on one side?
Yeah. So like on the military side, I worked in SCI, like TSSCI type stuff. So SCIFs.
Yep.
And then on the Air Force side, I worked in special access programs. So black
Gotcha.
stuff.
Yeah.
So unacknowledged, all that type of stuff. So,
yep.
So I worked in different aspects on both, and it worked fantastic because the skills that I picked up in my civilian sector directly related to the military and vice versa. And I was able to really provide a lot of value to the Oklahoma National Guard and for the Air Force.
Awesome. Tell us what happened. So you have all that experience, you have all that knowledge, you have all that expertise, right? Something that's highly valuable. And what happened when we came to the 2021 belligerence? What happened to you when we came to the weaponized mandates? What happened to you when we came to a belligerence within the chain of command, almost basically an infiltration that started coming down through the executive, through the states and things like that? What was the experience like for you, and what happened to you?
Sure. So let's start with when COVID first rolled out. So I'm trying to think, what was that? Was it 2020, early 2020, when that first started? It was at the end of Trump's administration.
Yeah, March 2020. Yeah.
Right. So I was still in the Army at the time. And in April of 2020, is when we started seeing cases in the United States. And I was doing a little bit of traveling and stuff for the Army at the time. And we were doing some tech resets on some SATCOM equipment that we've got. And one of the things that happened is because we were traveling, I got exposed to COVID really early. And I got really sick. I actually, I was sick for about 3 weeks. And I actually was monitoring my blood oxygen levels, and they were getting really low, and I had actually collapsed in my house and started blacking out. My wife had to call 911, and they had to put me on oxygen. And this is when I had COVID. I didn't have to get intubated or anything, thank God. My oxygen levels kind of stabilized once they just put me on an oxygen mask. I blacked out completely. I thought I was going to die. My wife was crying and all that stuff. And, I was at the point where I was like, I was okay with it. I didn't, then, but thankfully that didn't happen. And,
thankfully they didn't put you on a freaking intubator.
Yeah. And so my chain of command was aware that happened to me, as well as the chain of command that I had with the U.S. Air Force. And they were really supportive and all that stuff. And I really appreciated it. The people that I worked with were fantastic, at the time directly. And so all that stuff happened. Then the fall of Afghanistan happened, probably, I don't know, 5 months later. And, I was in Afghanistan, and, we had interpreters and stuff that we worked with directly. I was an intel guy. So that was, I worked directly with our human guys. And so we had, close contact. So that was really hard to watch and for all that stuff to happen. And then after that, I think it was around November-ish timeframe, or maybe it was September, when we started seeing rumblings about, I think it was September, we started seeing rumblings about a forced vaccine mandate. And actually, I skipped something. In that summer in July, I was actually National Training Center. So it was my guard unit's time to go to NTC. I don't know if a lot of people are aware what that is. It's the premier war fighting fake war thing that the Army does. The Air Force, I think, has Red Flag. It's kind of similar. So we were out in Death Valley, California for about 6 weeks, doing all that stuff. And it was before the vaccine mandate, but at the time the Army was starting to do the force testing stuff and doing force masks, and and they really were trying to separate soldiers based off of their medical status. And one of the things that happened is, because I wasn't vaccinated, if you got it, well, we were in the field for like 4 weeks and we were trying to conduct this this exercise, and we had a random person that got exposed to COVID who was unvaccinated, and they used that as an excuse to actually put us all in a COVID quarantine camp. So the U.S. Army put me in a COVID quarantine camp for about 2 weeks. So that was interesting. And then they were talking about, if we didn't test negative, they were going to keep us there, passed it off of our orders, we would get paid, stuff like that. So it was crazy. But so that kind of stuff happened. And we came back, and then they started doing the to the vaccine mandate. And so initially, my plan was, I would consider myself religious. I was raised Catholic. I actually used to be like a worship leader and stuff for, I was raised Catholic. I became Protestant. And then in my late teenager years, I became a worship leader and all that other fun stuff. But I'm not really practicing as much anymore due to some personal stuff. But I still believe in God. I still believe, I still have my own personal religious beliefs and stuff like that. And I've had some pretty profound experiences. That's kind of hard to describe on some of the stuff that's happened to me, like I would say spiritually. But essentially, what happened is they pushed the vaccine mandate out. I submitted my religious accommodation with the Army initially. And I started seeing the blatant discrimination of my soldiers and other soldiers in different companies and battalions. And at the time, I was a CW2 at the time. And, I'm only one deep. I'm one guy. I can't go and stop all these, senior NCOs from all these different battalions from screwing Joe over. And some of the stuff that I really saw that was kind of disgusting to me was the discrimination that wasn't even forced by regulation. It was just people's ego screwing with people. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with what I'm talking about on some of that type of stuff. People were getting power trips, and
Big time.
yeah, they were hazing people based off their religious beliefs. They were separating them based off their religious beliefs, which is all illegal. And then the other thing that I saw, and this is on the civilian side, is they were doing the exact same thing to civilians. And we had guys that I was working with that were dealing with cancer, and they had like organ transplants and stuff, and they were getting threatened that if they didn't get the vaccine, even though, and they had letters from their doctors saying that they shouldn't get it, and the Air Force was giving them a hard time about it. And these are guys that are like close to retirement. So ridiculous, man.
Yeah.
So,
No.
but yeah. So, anyways, what happened was, thank God I was at the end of my service obligation. I had already done 6 years as a warrant, and I was just kind of waiting, and looks like I was going to make CW3, which was was cool, I guess. And once I started seeing what they were doing, the Joes, I could not, in good conscience, allow that to happen under my watch. And the thing was, is I was one deep in the Guard unit. I was the only guy who did what I did in Oklahoma National Guard. I was the only person who ever did it. I was the only
Wow.
person who ever filled that slot and hold that chief warrant officer position.
Wow.
So I decided that if they were going to do that, maybe what I could do is I could resign my commission and I could show them that I'm not going to put up with it. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
So I resigned my commission in protest to the illegal behavior that I saw. And about 6 weeks later, I was also dealing with the same type of behavior with the U.S. Air Force in my civil service position. I actually submitted 2 religious accommodations. I submitted one for the vaccine mandate and the mask mandate. When I submitted the one for the mask mandate, they wouldn't even accept it. They had threatened to arrest me. They wouldn't even accept it. And it's like, hey, how can you guys do that? This is your process. These are your rules. I'm following your rules. Submitted the paperwork according to your rules. The base commander, they went all the way up to the base commander. I was the only person at Tinker Air Force Base that submitted a religious accommodation for the mask mandate. I already had natural immunity. They knew that. And I got put on oxygen for it. And then they threatened to arrest me. My answer was, that's fine. I will go home and none of your stuff will work. Because I was also one deep within the Air Force of what I did there too. So
Wow.
and about 4 weeks later, I did leave. And I found a new job and I got paid more money. And they still haven't backfilled my position.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that across the board where they've taken these highly experienced, highly educated individuals and just threw them to the curb, throwing out all that experience. Even, I mean, look at the pilot corps. Like these pilots, highly experienced pilots, loved what they did, got forced with the experimental injections. Even if it was FDA approved, they still couldn't participate or shouldn't have been able to participate with it because that's the FAA regulations and laws. They have to wait at
Right.
least a year for it to be out. And yet
Right.
here we had chain of commands that were not only violating the law, blatantly violating the law, but like you said, going above and beyond to screw service members over. And that's why I always go back to it's a foreign belligerent occupation. It's a foreign belligerent infiltration. And it started on January 2021. And then soon after that, we saw the weaponized mandates. And anybody who's not paying attention, I mean, go back and just look at the information pouring out. Look at the fraud pouring out, and start connecting the dots, and you'll figure out real quick it was in fact a foreign belligerent occupation. We are in fact at war. We're in fact at war, and as a service member, you have a duty to stand up against such threats, such enemies, foreign and domestic. So, no, I appreciate that and what you've done. And it's a damn shame that your chain of command didn't see it the way you did and threw all your experience out the window for you doing the right thing. Now, I want to ask you, because I do want to get to your game. I do want to get to what you're doing now with Falcon trading cards and things like that. But um, I guess um, I guess what inspired you, and I do want to bring these cards up for the audience. So I don't know if the best thing would be to bring some of these cards up, and then simultaneously we'll talk about what inspired you to start this um, as you did. So I guess one of the first ones we can bring up here for the audience, and forgive me, audience, I'm gonna uh, there we go. Well, let's start with where's a good one? They're all good. They're all good, but I wanted the military one.
Declining
Oh, there we
standards.
go.
Oh,
Let's see.
yeah, Hall Ranger. Oh yeah. So I guess we can kind of talk about it. So I'm a big history buff, big reader. And during that time when I had to end both of my careers, I had to take a major leap of faith. You know, it was scary. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" you're gonna like, how are we gonna pay our bills? And you know, my mind at the time was I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror and be okay with who I see looking back at me. You know, and so one of the things that I do is I've been reading a ton of history. I've read a lot of what Gandhi did in India. I've read a lot about the Spanish Civil War. I've read a lot about the American Revolution. I've read a lot about the Russian Revolution in 1917. And one of the things that stands out to me is all the people that led those, regardless if you agree with their, like the way they did it or their political views, they were effective. One, and two. One of the other things that they had is they had a way to publish their beliefs. Okay, so Gandhi, in India, actually owned his own newspaper, and one of the ways that he was actually be able to effectively combat the British, the colonial British rule at the time was through his newspaper. And you have to be able to publish. That's how these other guys, that's how our opponents, through the legacy media, through the colloquial deep state operate. They're able to publish books, movies, music. They're able to write articles, and that really boils back to this concept of public opinion. A couple of the other books I've read is Public Opinion by Walter Lippmann and Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Fantastic books. I highly recommend you read them. Those guys were instrumental into America's World War II propaganda campaign, and they're also highly influential in regards to the way that advertising works today. And advertising is a euphemism for propaganda. That's all it is. So people don't realize that. And one of the other things that you'll realize, like if you watch like talk shows, a lot of times like the audience, like a live audience talk show, especially if you have like somebody with a dissenting opinion that comes on and then they'll question them, and then you can have an audience that laughs, boos, or does all their little group stuff. What that does is that puts that individual in propaganda surrounds. So if everyone knows that they're lying to you, but you don't know that they're lying to you on purpose, you think they're all being honest, right? Your brain doesn't, you can't conceive that everybody would all be on the game to screw you over. Truth is, sometimes they are. And it's really just a stage to make other people think that you're in the minority. When in reality, it's just a game. It's stagecraft. It's like they're like magicians.
And they're getting paid and incentivized to be there, unbeknownst to the individual receiving that information. Like a good example is the recent, it's not even revelations to you or I, but the recent revelations of evidence-based facts of USAID paying media outlets to run and DARPA, the Department of Defense, DARPA running deception operations and paying Reuters via contracts to run deception operations. So if you're constantly surrounded in this box, just like you said, how are people to deduce what is fact from fiction if they're in this box and being essentially gaslit? I'm
sorry, hold on one second. I got some people. I'm still in here.
Yeah, no worries.
Absolutely. Not right now.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So you're at a home
service.
You travel. This is Cameron on travels. Yeah, trying to clean his room, folks. No, so you're essentially getting gaslit by your entire surroundings and environment. And if you don't pull yourself out of that and start really questioning it, you're going to become a casualty of it. And that's what we're seeing now. And that's why I think what you're doing is fantastic. It's not, we'll be surprised if I don't get banned on YouTube soon for some of the things I'm putting out, because for the audience's awareness, YouTube has also been censoring, and I'm sure a lot of the audience that might watch this already knows this, but even YouTube obviously has been censoring channels, censoring dissenting opinions. If I say fraudulent election, foreign belligerent occupation, that's probably going to go into the algorithm and get this censored. But we have a platform thus far, which on other opportunities to get this information out, it's slow. And if the individual's not looking for it or doing their own research, they're just going to be trapped by that surround box you talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
So one of
so,
the other interesting,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to point out. So one of the other interesting things that came up in the book, Public Opinion, the book was written in the 30s. One of the things that it talks about is the way that news publishers make money. And they only make really money, even in the 30s, through advertising. That is a major, I would say, vulnerability for controlling the opinion of news publishers, especially when you can have unlimited subsidized cash to pay a newspaper when they're not going to get anything in the classifieds. Instead of say, hey, just don't post that the U.S. government or USAID, not U.S. government, USAID is giving you grants, and you don't even have to advertise it. We'll give you $1 billion, that type of stuff. And so, who do you think they're going to ensure that, if you have a donor, aren't you going to make sure that your biggest donor is happy? And they've known that since the 30s, man.
Yeah. I mean, longer than that, but yeah. I mean, you control the information streams, you control the people. And it even goes back to religions too. You talked about, your practice growing up Catholic. I grew up Catholic, and the Catholic Church right now is the church, not the people within the church. I'm talking about the church. The organizational structure is completely going to be exposed. I mean, it's been exposed for a long time, dripping out, but it's going to continuously be exposed. And I'm not talking about the denomination of Catholicism. I'm talking about the business structure and how they've also been funded through government operations to shape the narratives within these churches and things like that. And Catholicism, let's be honest, isn't the only denomination out there. But
who do you think gives bigger tithes, the churchgoers or the government institutions that have unlimited money printers?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then
I mean,
and then
look at USAID and Catholic Charities.
Yeah, and they make damn sure the priest isn't stepping out of the narrative, the established narratives. Why do you think majority of the churches shut down and force or at the very least force their churchgoers to wear masks, or stood up on the pulpit and told their churchgoers that get the vaccine. Do your part, get the vaccine. How many churches did that? And who funded that? And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I do want to get back to your game. I want to bring up some of these cards. I want you to speak to them. And we'll just go through them for the audience. So tell me about this one. So the Alphabet Mafia. All right. Where'd the inspiration come from this? So we'll read it. Equitable redistribution. Every child belongs to the Wilder community, not just their family. This creates more equitability, inclusive for the world for everyone. Ability: select an enemy operative card and transition it to your front row. Cut the PP and ATK
Attack in half.
Attack in half. So tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we could just kind of get to where the idea for Falcon trading cards and Swamp Monsters came from. So actually, we got the original idea from watching the Whatever podcast, which is kind of funny. I remember there was a scene that we saw. So my buddy Eric and I, he's my stepbrother. He kind of got included in our family when he was about 15 years old. He ran away from home, and my parents pretty much adopted him. And ever since then, he's an Army vet as well. He was Army infantry. He deployed to Iraq. Was airborne. He was a sniper, saw combat too, and he got out as I believe as a sergeant. But he's one of the funniest guys I know. When I was younger, I remember we would play Halo 2 online, and me and my buddy's job was to play Halo. His job was to put the mic on and trash talk. So so he's a fantastic trash talker. And one of the things that we wanted to do is start a small business. For various reasons, and we thought a cool way to do it would be to make a game publishing company, which is based off of the reasons I stated previously. For those types of things. And I came to the realization that the reason that people think things are funny is because they're true. Okay. Yeah. And the problem is when you have political arguments with people, is they have all these blinders up and they have all these things that they've been programmed or taught throughout their life. Like, people have been taught that, let's say the word Nazi. Today, it doesn't actually mean anything. I mean, it means National Socialist from, it was a political party in Germany in World War II that, did some bad stuff. And, they just call anybody that because that Nazi equals bad, so you're bad, right? And so those types of triggers have been put in people a long time. And the thing is comedy kind of bypasses that. When you watch stand-up, they're super offensive. They make fun of, whatever. And people laugh, and they laugh because they know it's true. And so the thing that I thought is I wanted to create a media that was outside of social media, where people could meet in a physical space where they could feel safe with friends, and they could play a game. And the game is funny, but what they don't realize is it's funny because it's true. And the things that we're talking about are real. These are real caricatures of real issues in our life. And the game is meant to be like a cerebral type of exercise or war game. So the game is actually essentially a wargaming exercise to use essentially money, influence, morale, to attack your opponent's political power and put them in jail. That's the point of the game. Destroy their political power, put them in jail. The reason we decided to do that is because that's what they've been doing to us. And we decided to go ahead and make fun of it. The thing is, I've realized, especially from being deployed, being in the military, a lot of people like to give a hard time to guys for their crude humor, especially law enforcement and military. But the reason there's a reason they do that. It's actually a coping mechanism, because when you see terrible stuff, terrible things happen to you, sometimes the only way you can have any power or control over it is to laugh about it. Because if you don't laugh about it, you'll cry. So you have to laugh. You have to make fun of it. It's the only way to wrap your head around it, And so what we decided to do is take these very serious issues and give ourselves power over them by mocking them. When we mock them, we have power over them, and we're able to think about them in a different way. And so the card game is actually attempting to be a way to bring people in through comedy and through the artwork and through the strategy. It's actually, I love Dungeons and Dragons. I love trading card games. When I was a kid, I played Pokemon and all that stuff. And, I really enjoyed sitting with friends in a way and really this game is actually kind of a drinking game. It supports up to 6 players. You can do 1v1. You can do a 3-person, 4-person, or up to 6. And it's really meant to kind of replace like a game night as Cards Against Humanity style, comedy, or it's almost like if the guys from South Park made Pokemon. That's the idea. So, but
it's fantastic when I'm running through these cards and I'm reading them, and what you're absolutely right. The last, it's a long time that these infiltrators have just destroyed and attempted to destroy our country. And when you look at these stories, you could cry and you get all emotional about it and get all angry about it. But but you're right. Like when you've turned this into, it's like a truther game on steroids with comedy. It's hilarious when I remember when you first showed me these cards, I was just laughing my ass off, and I'm like, how do I buy these cards? Just how does and for the audience out there, how do they buy the cards? And I understand there's a
Sure.
game to it too, and I've got the link in the thing below. Is that the link to where people can go to actually buy the game, buy the cards? And I know, we talked about running through a scenario of the game itself, but just generally speaking, on a simplified level, how do people get a hold of the cards? And like for example, if this was you're having a party at your house and these are on the coffee table, somebody picks them up. I mean, or you just
Yeah.
start passing them around. That's in my mind, that's fantastic. That is,
Yep.
uh, it's hilarious.
Yeah. So the way to get access to the cards is you go to shop.falcontradingcards.com. We have a couple different products, and if you join our mailing list, I'll have to double. I can't remember if it's 10 or 15% off. I have to double check. But there is a discount on there. And so we have singles for sale. So our singles are autographed by Eric, and they're also holographic. So we have holos, just like in standard trading card games. We also have booster packs. They're actually hand loaded. So we hand loaded all of them. And they have 11 cards in them, and I think there's an 80% chance of getting a holo in it or higher. And some of the cards and some of the boosters have 2 or 3 holos in them.
So I showed some of the cards. I showed some of the cards on screen. They're not obviously that's not all the ones you have. How many total have you all created?
We
You know,
yeah.
in this genre.
So the first edition of Swamp Monsters TCG, Eric and I created 192 unique cards.
Wow.
So when Pokemon first came out, it only released with 120. So that was our goal to try to get to that number. And by the time we were done with it, because what would happen is we would watch stuff that was happening on the news that week, and then we'd just be like, well, that's stupid. So we'd make fun of it, put it in a card game. And like one of the things that we really tried to do that's a little different from this game is we actually put jokes inside of the game mechanics, as you saw with Alphabet Mafia. So the way the game plays, there's puns and there's jokes built into the way that the game plays. I don't know. Are you able to pull up Fang Fang?
Oh yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
we had Fang Fang up quite a few times.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know who Fang Fang is, and so there's layers. So Fang Fang, it's a trap. Okay, obviously.
So explain
And
that
then
explain that real quick for the audience who might not know the real context behind Fang Fang, where this card came from, who was involved with the real Fang Fang, and
yeah,
so
so
we can understand this.
okay, so it takes a couple things. So let's start with this. So the way that Fang Fang is a Chinese spy that Congressman Eric Swalwell was had a relationship with. It came out.
In real
Remember,
life,
if it came
this
out
is a
in
fact,
real
ladies
life.
and gentlemen. Okay.
Yeah, and so we thought it'd be funny to go ahead and put her in the game. And so we make Fang Fang. She's a trap, haha. And then her ability is Swallow Well, which is a light jab at Eric Swalwell. And then her the way the card works is she does PP recovery. So in the game, we have a pun called PP that we use all the time, and it actually stands for political power. But all the cards have dick jokes on them because we think that's kind of stupid and funny. And we think it's ironic for the way that these people are, so we make fun of them. And so essentially what she does, if somebody plays like a health potion or a PP recovery card, she sucks up half the PP and you can apply to your card in your front row. And so so that's kind of the level of some of that stuff. And you'll see, just like on Alphabet Mafia, they say cut the PP and attack in half. So cut the political power, so which is like their health points, and their attack in half. And oh yeah, there you go. There you go.
Suspected Chinese
Yep.
spy targeted California politician. So here we have Eric Swalwell with Fang Fang. So it says a suspected Chinese intelligence operative developed extensive ties with local and national politicians, including U.S. congressmen, in what U.S. officials believe was a political intelligence operation run by Chinese main civilian spy agency between 2011 and 2015. And so here we have Eric Swalwell with Fang Fang. And let's go back to the card here. And there it is.
And you know,
Fang
there it
trap,
is.
swallow well. It's so good. It's so good.
Thank you. And here's the cool thing.
Like you said, there's so many layers to it.
And here's the other cool thing about the game. The game is a war game. It's wargaming. And so once you actually play the game, you'll actually begin to realize why these people act the way they do. Why are they doing these actions? Well, that's because it's the cards they have available in their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you start thinking about it like that, and you're like, oh,
talk about
the other thing that Manderson Scooper. Yeah, Manderson Scooper, the most I honestly, a lot of times I like to play as establishment left just because it's fun. I like to play as Obama and do all the fun stuff. And it's just fun. And like this game is actually one of the things we do is we poke jabs at left and right because we want people who don't believe what we believe to play the game. And that's okay. What we want people to actually sit down and think and be like, wait a second, I've been lied to because I'm, you know what I mean? Because once you start playing it, you're like, oh my gosh. So we can go back to Manderson Scooper, but his, if you take a look at his special ability, it's backdoor access. Probably because Mockingbird Media and some other stuff.
Probably because he's a CIA asset, but yeah.
And
probably because he's received millions from USAID. This is hilarious, man. Yeah. This is hilarious. Yeah. So, and then like going to your point, like you've got rhinos on here, like Senator Graham.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we got Eye Patch McCain as well.
Yep. Eye Patch McCain. I saw that. Where is he at? Bring him up there.
And here's a cool thing that we thought would be fun, just like in Pokemon, how you can evolve in our game, you can promote. So you can start off with Daniel Crenshaw, and then just like a Pokemon, after they've been deployed for one turn, you can promote them up to Eye Patch McCain. And the other funny thing is, if you take a look at the promotion cost, $1 billion, and it has a thing. So CFC stands for crumbling fiat currency. Which we thought was funny. And so the only way to get politicians out on the field and get them to fight for it, you got to pay them $1 billion. So we thought that'd be, the money's everybody. So it's like it's $1 billion to get Eye Patch McCain out. And so once you start to realize, like most decks, when you play, so the 69 plus 1 card decks, because that's funny. And most decks, you have to have about $20 to $25 billion worth of CFC in it. And once you start to think about that, you're like, wait, it takes me 20 to 25 billion in this fake game to run an operation to fight my political enemies. And then you start thinking about how much money did USAID give to these people? $250 billion. That's like, holy heck, that's like 10 decks worth of fighters. So you start to think about that. You start to think about the scale and the scope, and it starts putting it in perspective for you. So stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting angry, but you're laughing at the same time. There's a whole roller coaster of emotions going on there. And then if you're drinking,
and then you start to think about strategy. Yeah, you start to throw drinks in there. Man, we had a guy. We have 6 political factions. We have let me pull them up. We have alt left. We have alt right, MEGA, establishment right, establishment left, libertarian, and leftist. One of the things we thought was kind of funny was the term MEGA. We couldn't go with MAGA because it's trademarked, and we didn't really want to push that. We wanted to caricaturize some of this stuff, and make fun of it, even though it's some of the stuff that we believe in. And so we were trying to figure out what kind of other similar acronym we can make to MAGA that would be fun. And so we was like, MEGA. What does that stand for? Make illegals go away.
This is epic. This is epic. Hey, so we're running out of time here. But this has been an amazing episode. I want to have you back because I want to dive into the actual gameplay, the board session, and things like that. Please, final words for the audience. I'm going to pull up and folks, all the links are going to be in the description of the video. His X account, you can follow. You can follow Cameron below on his X account. He posts a lot of good
banned,
things.
So I had to make a new one.
Yep. And they also go at Falcon Cards on X as well. So you can follow them in there. Cameron, I really do appreciate you coming on. Any last words for the audience?
I would just say there's a term that I learned reading a book. There's a movie actually called the movie's called The Men Who Stare at Goats. The book is fantastic. It's by John Ronson. I highly recommend you listen to the audiobook. It's hilarious, but it's a true account of the CIA, the global war on terror, and all that type of stuff. And one of the things that one of the main characters in that book said was the idea of to be more cunning. And most people consider cunning in a negative connotation. But what if you consider being more cunning in the ability to fight for your family and the things that you believe in? And what that means is you have to be strategic. You have to understand the tools your enemy use against you better than they do and use it back against them.
Amen. Well, appreciate you, Cameron. Thanks for coming on. God bless you. And like I said, would love to have
Thanks.
you back. Take care. Folks, great episode here. Again, links in the description below. Also, check out freedomfighter1776.com. Get some more information about Patriots, what's happening, a little bit about my stories over there as well, but Patriot resources. Also, check out Freedom Financial 1776, which gives you tools for the new financial system. It gives you tools, so do your own research and start understanding some of the technology that's coming out to implement in your life, in your businesses, and things like that. We'll see you next time, folks. God bless. Much love.